What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a deep dive into the number 24 team in my 2019 NFL Power Rankings, the New York Jets. So at number 24 here, we're now about a third way through this series, which means we're getting closer and closer to the NFL season. Very exciting. Please hit that like button, guys, if you enjoy, if you learn something. It's the easiest way to share the video, support my channel. Also, make sure you're following me on Twitch. Tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to resume my Cardinals rebuild, kicking off Season 2. It's been a fun time hanging out with you guys, getting that series going, answering your football questions, so make sure you don't miss that. You can also catch it on YouTube afterwards on my new channel, TFG Plays. I will drop those links in the description below. So if you're new to this series, what we do is we run a little intro, then we go through the roster, we talk about each position group, how they rank and stack up against the rest of the league. While we do that, you will be looking at my own personal custom Madden roster. So while it is a video game, these are my own ratings and they accurately show how I perceive each player, and it's just a nice little graphic to use. And then after that, we go through the schedule, go game by game, talk about this team's Vegas over-under and my own win total expectations for this team. So let's get into it here with the New York Jets, who come in 24th. Maybe a little lower than some of you may expect, given my perception of Sam Darnold, where I tend to be much higher on him, and we'll get into Sam Darnold in depth in the quarterback portion of this video. But I also think there's a lot of moving pieces here. I'm expecting some learning curves from this team, and that might explain why they don't come in, say, a couple spots higher than here at 24. But what I will say is that I do think there is a tier jump from number 25 to 24 here in terms of playoff expectations. And we had a tier, I would say, from 25 to 30 of teams that in a very deep NFL could make the playoffs. I think there's a higher probability jump here from 25 to 24 with the New York Jets, and they have some seriously legitimate expectations here, which are definitely what you would expect after the offseason this team had. You got a new coach in here in Adam Gase, who for one I think gets a bad rap. He's had Jay Cutler and Ryan Tannehill and has still led his teams to being competitive, and a 10-win Dolphins team that had no business making the playoffs a couple years ago. He might be a little stubborn, a little hard to work with, but I do think that was a good hire. Then you just totally blew out in free agency. You bring in Le'Veon Bell. You bring in CJ Mosley. Now, I do think splashing in free agency historically will tell you that has a high probability of leading to some unwarranted hype, but regardless, that hype is still here, and those are two very good players. Then you have the draft, and you fire your general manager, who has basically been holding this team back by failing to find talent after the first round for about 5 straight years, and this team, I think, is still trying to make up for the ground left behind from some pretty bad drafts. So a lot to talk about here, a very new look New York Jets team here. So let's just get into it with the quarterback here. Coming in 18th here, it all starts with Sam Darnold. It is no secret that here on this channel, I am very high on Sam Darnold. I have high expectations for him. My comparison for him, at least how he projects down the road, as we know he's still young and is developing, is some cross between Andrew Luck and Phillip Rivers, which is obviously very high praise. And I think this second season with more talent around him is going to be telling on if those are reasonable expectations or not. Now, I do think he has time still in a third year to prove himself. He's only 21 years old. This is his first year with a new coach and some new playmakers here. As far as his film goes last year, he had a lot of inconsistencies. There were times, say the Dolphins game, the Packers game, really all of December last year, where he looked like that high-level prospect, a potentially elite game-changing quarterback. But there was also games where he had a hard time going through his reads and made some questionable throws. So you do want to see a step up in terms of his consistency in year 2. But Sam Darnold, the player, has an elite arm, the ability to make every throw on the field. He has those elite traits as a mobile quarterback, the elite pocket presence to extend plays. And he's extremely accurate downfield as well. All traits that I expect him to continue to develop and show as his career moves on. And I think the box score chasers out there are going to look at Sam Darnold, compare him to Baker Mayfield, who had an extraordinary rookie year, and say Sam Darnold's not a good quarterback. You know, Baker is awesome, but Sam Darnold's his own player as well. Dealt with a garbage offensive line, very bad play calling, no wide receivers here, and still play better than I think a lot of rookies do in better situations. So really excited to see Sam Darnold play out here in a more mature situation with a coach that has made Ryan Tannehill look like a competent quarterback at times, or Jay Cutler as well. And maybe I'm being optimistic ranking him 18th in the NFL already, and maybe I'm projecting a little bit there as well, but I actually truly think by the end of this season, he'll be, you know, pretty much consensus top 15. And then behind him, you have Trevor Simeon. Could do worse as a backup. Obviously, if Sam Darnold were to get injured, this season is done. They just don't have the talent here to win with a Trevor Simeon. You've also got Davis Webb here, who they took from the Giants, whatever. And then Luke Falk, they're able to swipe him up from Miami. I'm a little surprised he's bounced around the league so much as a young player. I liked him coming out of college. Really quick-witted, quick-release quarterback. Just must not have the arm talent to kind of stick in the NFL. But this really is all about Sam Darnold here and what kind of strides he can take next year, and I'm very excited to see it. If this team is going to meet those playoff expectations, or if anyone has playoff expectations of this team, it is going to be thanks to Sam Darnold becoming the borderline elite quarterback that he has the potential to reach. So then we move on to the running back position, where they're going to rank second here. And this obviously is going to start with Le'Veon Bell and the big signing here. Now, I'm going to preface everything I'm about to say here with a statement that I think Le'Veon Bell will still be a very good running back, something of a top 5 running back. But I do want to say I've got a lot of questions here about Le'Veon Bell. There's reports that he's overweight. Some of the quotes you get from him, like he's in New York now, he likes his music, that Adam Gase didn't want him here. There's some weird voodoo going on with Le'Veon Bell off the field. He's also had 2 significant injuries in his career. Also, like, just looking back at Pittsburgh, literally everyone they've plugged in there, whether it's D'Angelo Williams, James Conner, a converted fullback in Jalen Samuels, they've all produced at a high level at the running back position, and it starts to make you wonder, is Le'Veon Bell quite as good as we thought? A running back worth the money that he got, like $15 million. So I do have my question marks there. All that said, a couple years ago, I would have considered Le'Veon Bell the best running back in the NFL. Now, I think his biggest impact here is going to be as a receiver, as a check down and screen target for Sam Darnold, something I've talked about in the past on this channel. It can be very comforting for a young quarterback to have that option on 2nd and 8, to have a guy that can catch a check down and turn it into a first down so you don't end up having to deal with as many stressful 3rd downs. You know, he has that great elusive ability after the catch. Now, as a runner, he'll contribute. He's a very good running back. It's not a good offensive line here. He's going from one of the best offensive lines in the NFL to one of the worst. And Le'Veon Bell is not Zeke Elliott. He's not, say, Saquon Barkley with the explosive running style to kind of create big runs when the blocking's not there. Le'Veon Bell is more of a patient runner, and I think his running numbers are going to be very down this year. If he didn't even reach 1,000 yards rushing, it frankly would not surprise me that much. But his impact as a receiver, assuming he's back to the old Le'Veon Bell that we know and love, is going to be exponential on the growth of this team. And I do think at the end of the day, for a team that didn't have anyone to pay anyway, could be a very nice 2 to 3 year contract to help develop Sam Darnold. And you might actually look back on this and say, that was worth it, surprisingly, to pay a running back $45 million. But again, I don't think it's going to be because of what he offers in the run game. I think it's going to be being that good, nice friend for Sam Darnold in the receiving game. Behind him, this team did bring back Bilal Powell. He'll be a good reliever for Le'Veon Bell. Maybe get 4 or 5 carries a game. He's surprisingly just explosive and a good running back. Getting up there in age, don't expect a whole lot from him, but I do like Bilal Powell's game. You got Elisha Mcguire, 6th round pick in 2017. Speedy, jitterbug, 3rd down type. He's fine for that role. I would never project him as a starter, 3-down back type. Trenton Cannon, you can really say similar things about, a 6th-round pick last year. And then you have Ty Montgomery as well. 3rd down back, receiving type. You might even flex him out as a slot wide receiver. You got 3 depth pieces there as really athletic 3rd down back types. So we do rank the Jets 2nd in terms of running back. I'll hold my stance that Saquon Barkley is the best running back in the NFL. And a lot of that just has to do with some of those off-field questions I have with Le'Veon. But, I don't expect a ton of complaints here ranking the Jets 2nd at running back in the NFL. So then let's move on to wide receiver, tight end here. I think the first guy you're going to mention here is Robbie Anderson. Has some off-field concerns, but as of right now, he's got his head on his shoulders. He's going to be here in camp. Keep his fingers crossed that his head stays straight on those shoulders because he is incredibly gifted and talented. Came on really, really hard at the end of last year when Sam Darnold was frankly one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL down the last 4 weeks of the season. Getting Darnold and Anderson in there healthy together was really fun to watch and explosive, and Anderson has that great speed, and I think at the end of this month you got all those NFL players running that race. I don't know if that's for charity or whatever, but I think Robbie Anderson has a legitimate chance to win that race. He has just blazing speed, good hands, and catch and traffic ability as well. So maybe he can develop even further and become closer to a number 1 wide receiver. Right now I'd say he's more of just a deep threat, but he's got all the tools to continue to develop. Then you have Quincy Williams, who this team brought back on a contract extension. I like what he has to offer. I think that he is effectively, I don't want to call him a tight end, but he's that big-bodied, short to intermediate type of wide receiver. He'll play some more outside now with Jameson Crowder in here, but he's extremely physical and strong as a wide receiver, a good blocker. Has good straight line speed, but not necessarily elite quickness to create separation. So he's a very unique player. He's one of the more unique wide receivers in the NFL, and I like his game, just that physical style, but he's a wide receiver 3, I would say, and he's probably reached his ceiling. And then you got Jameson Crowder coming in here. This was a good signing if he can stay healthy. He's had some injury concerns. Now that he's out of the curse of the Redskins, he might be able to stay healthy. He's one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. Very smart receiver, very fast and quick as well. He can beat man off of his athletic ability, and he can beat zone because he's a smart guy and he knows where to sit down. And he's going to be a really nice weapon for Sam Darnold and a nice addition there. May have overpaid him. But still, again, it's not like this team had anyone to pay, so it's all about developing Sam Darnold at this point. So that was fine by me. And then you've got really wide open competitions after that. They had a couple veteran signings of some underrated veterans here. I actually expect that Josh Bellamy and Deontay Thompson make this team. Both have had surprisingly good seasons as like wide receiver 3s and 4 for their teams. Especially Josh Bellamy last year. His contested catch rate was off the charts for Mitch Trubisky. So he's going to be a nice add here. He's probably going to just replace that like Jermaine Kearse role for this team from last year. And then also keep an eye on Deontay Burnett. He had some moments last year. He was one of Darnold's receivers at USC. They had some chemistry last year, an undrafted free agent. I expect him to make this team. And then you've got like Sharon Peake, Tim White, J.J. Jones, Quadri Henderson, even Greg Dortch, more of a kick return type. They might actually keep 7 wide receivers here just because they seem to want to find as many good receivers here for Darnold as possible and have some nice depth there. So it's a fine wide receiver room. They are still going to need some guys to step up and develop here, but I'm going to rank it tied for 23rd. Certainly an upgrade from what they had last year. Also got to mention the tight ends here. Christopher Herndon, very good rookie season. Another guy that really came on late when Sam Darnold got healthy. Surprised me as a, intermediate receiver. I saw him as, my pro comparison for him was Dwayne Allen, who's never really emerged as a downfield threat, but he's a very good run after catch tight end, also a good blocker. Herndon actually made some incredible plays downfield. A lot of contested catches, so hard to know if that was luck or skill. but he does have that big frame, and I think he's a very good weapon. I thought this team made a pretty bad mistake with the interim general managing skills of Adam Gase to just release Jordan Leggett, who played well last year. I think that was a waste of a good asset. Trayvon Wesco in the 4th round is their 2nd tight end. I thought that was one of the worst picks in the draft. With Jordan Leggett there, I did not understand that move as a whole. He's fine. He's like an H-back type smart player, but has no physical tools to ever become a number 1 tight end. Just was not a fan of that pick at all. I'm sure he'll be fine as like a 2nd or 3rd tight end, but nothing to really speak of. Then you got Eric Tomlinson, fine as a blocker, not a very good receiver. Daniel Brown kind of can say the opposite of converted wide receiver. Fast dude, doesn't block very well, coming over from Chicago. And Neil Sterling, a bit of a journeyman at this point. So outside of Christopher Herndon, it's not a very good tight end room, but it will be interesting to see if Herndon is just kind of a low-level starter like a Dwayne Allen, like we mentioned, or if those downfield skills will continue to develop and become more consistent, and he can emerge as like a top 20 tight end or so. I was impressed by Herndon last year. So again, 23rd at the wide receiver position, certainly upgrading there with the skill players for Darnold between running back and wide receiver. Now, on the offensive line, did not see the types of upgrades that I would have liked to see this team add for Sam Darnold here. They're going to come in ranked 28th on the offensive line, which might be a little better than they had last year, but nothing significant. We start with the tackles. So Kelvin Beachum at left tackle. He can still play, but he's getting up there in age. Right tackle, a big question. Brandon Shell, a low level starter. Frankly, a best case scenario would probably be your swing 6th tackle, but that's probably who's going to start again at right tackle. You're going to have some competition. Brent Quavale. They took Shuma Adoga in the 3rd round. Would not have been my pick there in the 3rd round. He's a very much developmental athlete. Sam Darnold must have vouched for him or something coming out of USC, because the film would not tell you that he belonged in the 3rd round. You've also got Eric Smith from New England. It's going to be a competition at right tackle. I expect Brandon Shell to win it out almost by default, because I don't think the depth is very good there at all. On the interior, I do like the guards here. I think Brian Winters is a slightly underrated guard who's really struggled because of the talent around him, but he's kind of an eye-popping player. He can make some really nice impact blocks, and he's just a good guard here. And the fact that they've stayed with him despite all of this turnover shows, I think, what they think about him. He's a good player. And then Kaleki Asemele, they go and trade for him. He had a down year for Oakland last year. Could kind of say the same things about him with a lack of talent surrounding him. But he's also getting up there in age. At a time, he was one of the best guards in the NFL. Hopefully this team can recapture some of that, and he can play better than he was last year. But still an upgrade regardless. And then at center, probably the worst starting center in the NFL right now, Jonathan Harrison. I cannot believe, frankly, that this team did not address any type of center in the draft. Maybe they push like Winters inside and start Tom Compton or figure something else out outside of Jonathan Harrison, but he was not good last year. Pretty stunned, frankly, that they are going to be going with him. They also have John Toth, whatever. That's a big concern for me as center. That's a big part of, calling your protections and making sure everything checks out against the blitz, is having that smart center in there. And I don't think you have it right now with this Jets team. And that's a position that's, frankly, a little easier to find. And maybe this team picks up like John Sullivan or something and brings a veteran in there to play that center position. But as of right now, a major concern. So the offensive line for me, going to come in 28th. Would have liked to see them upgraded a little better. At least Sam Darnold, a mobile guy, is going to be able to elude pressure. But if you really want him to develop into that elite player, I think you would want a little bit better pass protection in there. And from a run blocking perspective, you don't have a whole lot either there to make Le'Veon Bell that highly effective runner. So the offensive line certainly what's going to be dragging this offensive rating down, which is not terrible. I do rank them 23rd. A lot of that is just optimism around Sam Darnold and Adam Gase. They're going to have some struggles at times depending on the types of defense they're playing, home road, all that stuff. But I think at times it's going to be a pretty good offense as well. but I don't see them cracking a top 20 offense. And then as far as the offensive coach and culture, I'm going to have them tied for 20th, which is certainly higher than you're going to see out there. I'm definitely higher on Adam Gase as well. I think it was a good hire. He's going to simplify some things for Sam Darnold, but I think he's also going to be surprised at some of the things he's going to be able to call. You know, he had a pretty limited playbook with Ryan Tannehill because of just arm talent and downfield confidence and accuracy throwing the ball. I think as he gets more familiar with Sam Darnold, we're going to see a better play caller from Adam Gase, who I already think is a pretty good play caller, just had his limitations there in Miami based on that personnel. So then let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball, where you have some exciting pieces, but you've got a new defensive coordinator here, Gregg Williams, who's going to be orchestrating a 3-4 scheme for the first time in his career. You're going to have a learning curve there in terms of his coaching and play calling. You've got some new personnel here. You have some holes on this defense as well. So let's get into it. We start with the run defense. Very, very good run defense here, where they're going to rank tied for 7th. It's one of the best interior defensive lines in the NFL. I think now the first guy you're going to mention is Quintin Williams. And, you know, I had at the Jets at 3, I was between taking Quintin Williams and Ed Oliver, because Quintin Williams, as an impact rookie, probably a better player than Ed Oliver, and is a fantastic prospect. My question is, can Quintin Williams return value of being that elite interior rusher? This is something we talk about all the time on this channel. If you're going to spend big money and spend big draft capital on the interior defensive line position, he better be an 80-plus pressure player, because you can find guys to play nose tackle and defend the run. But can Quintin Williams become a Geno Atkins, a Fletcher Cox? He certainly has that upside. He's a one-year starter at Alabama. So Quintin Williams is going to come in here as a rookie. I think will be a pretty dominant defensive player and one of the best young defenders in the NFL. I'm not trying to criticize this team for taking Quintin Williams. I do just want to throw out there that I would have considered Ed Oliver here because of the insane explosion he has to become more like an Aaron Donald as a pass rusher. But there's no doubt in my mind that Quintin Williams is a fantastic player. And then you've got the other Williams. You know, we're going to have the Williams brothers here. Leonard Williams, who is playing on his 5th year option right now. So this team is going to have some decision making to have around Leonard Williams, because you just paid Le'Veon and CJ Mosley. You're going to have to pay Sam Darnold eventually. Do they think they can afford Leonard Williams as a $15+ million contract? A very good player, borderline elite player, hasn't quite hit that upside yet. Will be fun to see the Williams brothers here kind of feed off each other. They're definitely going to help each other out, just because you can't double them both. So one of them is going to get sprung free. Both guys that, frankly, to this point in their careers have only seen double teams, so that's going to be a nice relief for them. And then you got Henry Anderson as well, who is a very good third piece here. You know, he'd be a good number 2 for most teams. You also have Nathan Shepard, a very good third round pick last year. He's an athletic guy, was like 25 years old, entering the league, already pretty refined. As a 4th guy, you could do a lot worse than Nathan Shepard. Also Steve McClendon here as the nose tackle. You know, you could argue he's a starter here, depending how you look at it. So very, very good front. You've also got Falorunso, Fadasuki, Brunson, Kaufusi. They're going to rotate slightly or just be depth or practice squad pieces here. But your first 5 here, very, very impressive. Now, again, the run defense is a little neutered in my own perception of the game. It has a high weekly variance. There's a lot of depth at interior defensive line in the NFL right now. It's a little easier to find these guys, so the difference between 7 and 26 isn't very large. But regardless, teams are going to have a very hard time running the ball on this front. You also have got to mention CJ Mosley and Jamal Adams, who are elite 2nd and 3rd level run defensive players. But as far as the pass rush is concerned, it is not going to be quite as good as that run defense. Now, it's not a bad pass rush here, but you don't have that number 1 edge presence, and you don't have an Aaron Donald, Fletcher Cox, Geno Atkins as far as we know. You know, maybe Quintin Williams can be that guy, and but like we said, there's only 3 or 4 interior defensive linemen in the NFL that are elite pass rushers. There's a good chunk of guys that can push the pocket and be 50-60 pressure guys. Is that Quintin Williams, or is Quintin Williams a 100 pressure guy, a Fletcher Cox type? We'll only find out through time. And you can really echo that about Leonard Williams, who still has high upside. So you are getting some good interior pressure here regardless, but on the edge, Jordan Jenkins, Ja'Kai Polite, a 3rd-round pick, Brandon Copeland, Terrell Basham. Like, you don't have, you know, you could argue a starting number 2 edge presence here. We'll see what Ja'Kai Polite offers, and that was a very good pick there in the 3rd round, but you do have off-field work ethic concerns with Polite. Now, I liked that pick. I did have a late 1st, early 2nd round grade on Ja'Kai Polite. I had said before the combine and some of these off-field concerns popped up that he was, to me, the 2nd best edge rusher in the class. But then you see the bad 40 time. You see him kind of not understand how to be a professional and play the process, and his draft stock really plummeted. So we'll see if he ends up to be the next Arden Key as a guy that just doesn't know how to work hard, or if he's, say, Carl Lawson as a steal on day 2 of the draft. But Brandon Copeland and Jordan Jenkins are guys that I say are 1st, 2nd down edge guys, better run defenders than pass rushers can cover. Terrell Basham, they picked this team up. They picked him up from Indianapolis. He was actually, I think, a 3rd round pick for Indianapolis. He's a good athlete, a little oversized to be a 3-4 outside linebacker, but he actually showed some nice things. You could do worse, I guess, as a 3rd or 4th rotational guy. But the edge rush here, simply put, is not very good, and it is what's dragging this pass rush ranking down, despite having a very good interior presence in the Williams brothers and Henry Anderson. So then we get to the middle linebackers here, which is very, very encouraging now that they have added CJ Mosley, a top 10 linebacker in the league. They may have overpaid for him, but he's a beast. You know, he's a little oversized for the modern linebacker, and you can see at times he will get mismatched on faster tight ends, slot wide receivers. So you will have to, you know, take the good with the bad with CJ Mosley, but he is, you could make an argument, the best run defending, thumping linebacker in the league, up there towards 250 pounds. But he moves incredibly well at that size. You wouldn't guess just by looking at him that he weighs 250 pounds. And even if he lacks a little bit of quickness and might struggle, you know, in certain man-to-man matchups, he is very instinctive in zone coverage, and his best thing that you can say about him is that he has those ball skills you look for as a playmaking middle linebacker. He will jump up and get a pick that you didn't see coming or force a fumble. So very nice addition, and he's going to be the captain of this defense as well. But you've got depth here as well behind CJ Mosley. Avery Williams is a very good veteran player. Now, they clearly have some questions about him in coverage, just as Tennessee did when they let him go. But he's going to be the number 2 here, and he's not going to have quite as big of responsibilities in coverage as he once had. So you could do a lot worse at number 2 than Avery Williamson, who's still a very good player. And then Blake Cashman in the 5th round, the biggest steal of the draft at any position, in my opinion. I did not shy from the fact that I had a 1st round grade on Blake Cashman, and I actually had him very close to Devin Bush, who went 10th in the draft. Insanely athletic, is not afraid to thump, and has, frankly, elite coverage skills, both athletically and in terms of his instincts and just play recognition. I think he's going to get on the field here over Avery Williamson on 3rd down, and could very well, if he stays healthy, just win out at starting job in general, and maybe they just trade Avery Williamson or cut him or something. I could not believe that the NFL looked at his tape and looked at his workout grades and decided that he was a 5th round pick. Now, could be a medical situation. I don't have the ability to grab a scope and look at Blake Cashman's knees, which are apparently a large concern here. But I have no doubt in my football mind that if Blake Cashman stays healthy, he is going to be one of the best players out of the 2019 NFL draft and certainly a steal. So Jets fans should be excited about that pick if he can stay healthy. I think he is just an absolute monster, and I'm excited to watch him develop here with this good linebacker room now next to CJ Mosley and Avery Williamson. And then you do have a bunch of pieces here. I don't think anyone's really going to be relevant. You got James Burgess they picked up from Miami, Neville Hewitt, Harvey Lange, more of a thumper. They add Jeff Allison from Fresno State. So you're going to have some competition there for 4th or 5th inside linebacker positions. So let's move on and talk about the secondary here. Starting with the corners, Tremaine Johnson, the signing really didn't pay off. Now he's a starting caliber player, but just doesn't have the athleticism to be a consistent #1 corner. In an ideal world, he is that #2 corner, like he had his best days when he could play next to Janoris Jenkins there with the Rams, but he is going to be flushed into that #1 role. You know, there's teams that have worse #1 corners than Tremaine Johnson, but certainly being overpaid at this point, and probably not a player that Jets fans are overly excited about having. But he's fine. I don't want to knock him too bad. Then you got some pretty serious questions at your #2 corner. You got Perry Nickerson, a speedy but really unskilled 6th round pick last year. Derek Jones, a 6th round pick in 2017. You do have Darryl Roberts here, who was outstanding and a total breakout last year, a really athletic guy. Now, they actually are listing him as a backup safety on our lads right now, but he played well at corner. I think he is going to compete there for that #2 corner spot and probably win it. And if he can repeat that breakout performance last year, then you could do worse as a #2 corner. And then I loved the Brian Poole signing. I can't believe that while players like Justin Coleman and Bryce Callahan were getting paid massive 3-year contracts, that Brian Poole was able to slip in here with the Jets for just a bargain contract. I would rank him among one of the 5 best free agent signings in terms of value. He's a very good nickel cornerback. He's like half linebacker as well with how physical he is against the run. So that was a steal of a signing, and this team is pretty set at nickel corner there. But I do have some questions there on the outside in terms of the cornerback, and it's going to be one of the bigger holes on this defense outside of the edge rush. And that's what's going to push this defense down is, frankly, edge rush and outside corners are going to be the #1 positions, #1 and 2 positions in terms of importance for me, in terms of playing good defense in the modern game. But you do have extraordinary safeties here. Jamal Adams, one of the best underrated rising stars in the game today. He's right there, in my opinion, with Derwin James, who is just a 2018 love child for how he dominated. And I'm as high on Derwin James as anyone else, but you got to mention Jamal Adams in the same conversation of that modern linebacker that can just safety who can play some linebacker, can cover in the nickel, can even play some free safety, just do it all and be a nightmare for offensive coordinators. You know, he is the #1 player that you're going to be circling for this defense in terms of we got to know where he is and what he's doing on every play, or he is going to break you. And then you got Marcus May, who's going to play more of that traditional free safety here. Now, these guys will move around, but that is one bright spot of the drafting from Mike Maccagnan, was that 2017 draft. You know, Adams was a bit of an obvious pick, but he seems to have found 2 very good studs there in the secondary. And then in terms of the depth, you know, is Darryl Roberts a 3rd safety here, a dime safety, that 3rd safety here, or does he start at corner? You got Doug Middleton, Rontez Miles, Jeremy Clark. They gave his number away to Brian Poole, so 6th round pick in 2017. He's probably not going to make this team, hasn't made his strides as a young player yet. You could use some better depth at safety. As a whole, this secondary going to come in tied for 11th. It's not a bad group by any means. I do have questions on the outside corners, but you love what you have in this safety room. So the defense as a whole for me is going to come in 26th, and you might look at some of these positional rankings and say that's a little low, and that's fair, but I think that speaks to the upside of this defense. You do still have some moving parts here. You got, for one, it's the Jets, who culturally right now are not exactly killing the game. They just got to figure out their identity as a team that has a big part of defense. Personnel is one thing, but scheme and chemistry is a whole nother thing. So that's going to drag this down. Also, just the edge rush, a major concern for me. If Quintin Williams or Leonard Williams can't emerge as that elite interior pass rusher, which they do have the upside to do, this team is going to have some inconsistency getting after the quarterback, which is going to put a lot of stress on those outside corners, which aren't exactly a strength for this team. So, you know, they're going to have some excitement on this defense with Jamal Adams, with CJ Mosley, with Quintin Williams, but I don't know if this defense is going to live up to some of the expectations they might have. You also just got to mention you got a new defensive coordinator here working on a new scheme with new players. Gregg Williams, correct me if I'm wrong, has never run a 3-4 scheme before. So it's just going to be a bit of a learning curve, and maybe by the end of the year, just like we said with the Cardinals, they prove to be a better defense than the 26th. So let's go through the schedule now. Probably the easiest schedule that we've had so far in these deep dives. So you start with Buffalo and Cleveland at home. I actually think there's going to be a lot of excitement around this team, and I think they're going to come out hot and actually take care of both of those teams. That Cleveland game is going to be a thriller. I want to say it's a primetime game, whether it's Thursday night or Monday night, but that's going to be a really good game. Then hear me out here. I'm actually going to have them beating New England in Foxborough. The Patriots, simply put, are not the same team in September as they are in December and later on in the year. I think it's a good thing to get the Patriots early in the season. Not going to be an easy win, and I did throw a question mark next to that game, but I'm going to, go out on a limb here and say that they can win that game. Then a really, really nightmarish stretch after a, kind of breakout 3-0 start. You might have a lot of excitement here, but you got to go to Philly. Gave them a loss there. Dallas coming to town. That's not going to be easy for this team. I had them losing that. New England getting their revenge in New York. A win there. At Jacksonville, not going to be easy. At Miami, the Jets are a better team, but that's still not an easy road game, as no road games are easy in the NFL. And then a little easier in the second half. You got the Giants in the subway battle. I don't know if that's necessarily a home field game. I would imagine that's going to be pretty split. But I gave them that win. At Washington, I did give them a loss there, but pretty much a coin toss there. Could win that. Oakland coming to town, should be able to win that. At Cincinnati, if it's not evident at this point, I'm a little higher on Cincinnati than majority this year, so I gave them that loss. Miami at home, should be able to win. But then a tough stretch at Baltimore, Pittsburgh, at Buffalo. Maybe if they are in the playoff race, they could piece together some wins there, but I've got them going 6-10, which is actually going to be an under here for the Jets. But looking at this schedule, you look at Jacksonville, Miami, Washington, Baltimore. Those are 4 games that I gave them losses here on the road. But if they can find ways to win those games on the road against teams that I rank below them, then we might start talking about this team being that 9-10 win playoff team like we talked about in the intro. This team very well could make the playoffs, hence the win range of 5-11. So while I'm predicting a 6-10 season here for the Jets and going under here on their over-under, I would not make that bet because I do think there's a chance that this team has enough to win those tough road games against lesser opponents, and it's just not the worst schedule in the world. So if this team ended up being a 10-win playoff team, sneaking in as a wild card, wouldn't surprise me at all. So that is going to do it here for the Jets. Let me know in the comments below, Jets fans, what you think. If I missed any players, if you disagree with me, I'd be glad to hash it out with you. Again, please hit that like button. And cheers as always, guys. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. And peace out.